You hear me in the back?
I'll turn it up a little bit.
Well, the reason I'm here is to let you know about what I'm doing. I'm going to be 96 years old next week, and I am running across the United States. I finished my first run from the Pacific to the Atlantic one day after my 93rd birthday, and I got a little bored, so I decided to run back the other way. So now I'm running from the East Coast to the West Coast. I'm a World War II veteran. I was in the Navy during World War II. I know most of the fifth graders I've talked to have asked me a lot of questions about the Depression, about running, and of course about the war. So I have written a book covering all of that because of the questions I'm getting from fifth graders. So I'll start out by letting you know what it was like during the Great Depression. You kids are spoiled, you just don't know, because you all have, your peers have everything you have and you think it's normal. Well, when I was a kid, you had nothing. But we had fun just the same. You know, just like any kid, we found things to do. We looked for adventure. I lived on a farm. I know every Christmas I asked for a little car. I was 5 years old before I finally got one because they cost a nickel in the dime store. Nobody could afford one. When I got through the Depression, we learned a lot. You didn't have any spoiled kids in World War II because they all went through the Depression. And I think that's one reason now that we're having problems in military and suicides, because we do have spoiled kids. So I would recommend to all young people to get all the experience they can in military type of things, like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Sea Scouts, whatever you like. Get some training. Even don't hesitate to go into the service when you get old enough, because it's going to be good training, and there's always going to be wars, and you better hope you never have to get into one of them, but be ready in case they need you. Because my generation and the generations before me kept this, well, the ones before me made this country a free country. And every generation from then on has kept it free. And freedom is not free. We're going to be counting on you young people to don't let us down. You got to keep it that way. I hope that you don't have to fight another war, because there's no such thing as a good war. So anyway, through the Depression and then into the war came along, and I was just in high school. I was a senior in high school when the war broke out, and immediately me and some of my buddies just headed for the recruiting station and joined the Navy. I didn't feel I could kill anybody, so I volunteered for hospital corps. The first part of the war, I served on a troop transport where we would go take the troops overseas and then bring the wounded back. And during the last part of the war, I got aboard in what we call an LST. Stands for Landing Ship Tanks. If you ever ask an LST man what it stands for, they'll tell you Large Slow Target. Because it moved slow and it bounced around a lot, but it's considered the ship that won the war. They built 1,051 LSTs during World War II, and right now there's only one left. that's operational and restored, and we have that one. We found it over on the Isle of Crete in the Greek islands, and we went over and got it. We worked on it for about 4 months and made it seaworthy. Brought it back to the United States on its own power. We have it here now. In fact, it's on its way now to Tennessee and then into Alabama and back up to Indiana, just giving tours. I was on it last year and gave tours. I took it up to Mississippi. Anyway, my job on the LST was just keep those Marines alive, because most of our corpsmen went ashore with the Marines. About 90% of them went ashore with the Marines, and they would they get a wounded, they put him on a stretcher, gave him a shot of morphine, and they'd bring him to us because our ships could go right up on the beach. We'd drop an anchor that could pull us off the beach when we get ready to pull off, and we could just drive right up on there. We had we could put about 30 tanks on our tank deck, and we'd have the top deck all loaded with trucks, ammunition, 100-octane gasoline, everything you're going to need on the beach during an invasion. And we could offload everything and unload. We'd either unload damaged equipment or prisoners or the wounded. And if they bring those wounded Marines to me, my job was just to make sure none of them died. I just do everything I could to keep them alive. And I was very fortunate. I never lost a patient during the whole war. I had one that was pronounced dead. I went against my superior officer's orders when he told me to leave him and help him with the others, because I knew he wasn't dead. Spent the whole night with him, but I brought him back. And so anyway, I spent the whole war in the Pacific. And the biggest invasion I hit was Saipan, the Marianna Islands. And I was very fortunate that I got out of there before what they now call the kamikazes. And you probably all heard of kamikazes. That's a Japanese name, but we call them suicide planes. And their idea was just to give their own lives, to dive in and kill us. And fortunately, when we hit Saipan, we had the island surrounded to where the ships couldn't get through to us. So the only problem we had was airplanes. The airplanes could get through. They had torpedo bombers come in. They did strafe us, with machine gun fire. Saipan was a very bad situation because the Japanese had been taught to believe that we would torture them the way they tortured our men. And so they were afraid. They were afraid to be taken prisoners, so they jumped off the cliffs and killed themselves. If the women and children didn't jump, they'd throw them or push them. So it was a very sad situation. We took good care of our prisoners, but they didn't know we would. They had been brainwashed into thinking that we wouldn't, that we would treat them terrible. I know they had the same trouble on the others over in Germany, but not as bad, because the Germans did respect, as to a certain extent, the Red Cross, that we carried on our sleeve. We took the Red Cross off our sleeves in the Pacific because we knew that they're going to use those for target practice. Because their theory was you kill one corpsman, you kill 3. So after the war, and I got back to the United States, like all veterans that you will notice, if you talk to veterans, they don't want to talk about the war. None of us talked about it much. I know when I decided to go get this ship, I was 77 years old. And my son asked me, Oh, he says, you were in the service, weren't you? See, we never talked about it. It's hard. And I know you probably everyone in here has some family that's been in the service somewhere back, and you probably found that too, that they don't talk about the war. If we get together in reunions, we talk about the good times. I love the Navy, I love being at sea, but I hate war. If there's any way to prevent a war, we should prevent them. No matter what the cost is, prevent the war if we can, because nobody wins. Well, after the war, and I came back like most veterans, we came back and I guess we started this spoiling process because we weren't going to let our kids go through what we went through. Not realizing that what we went through was probably good for us. But anyhow, I went to UCLA in Los Angeles on a GI Bill until I started raising a family. Then I dropped out. And I spent my life raising families. I've outlived 3 wives, so I have quite a few kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, great-great-grandkids. And well, anyhow, I had a good life. And when I retired, I heard about the ship. You see, they built, there was 1,051 of those LSTs during World War II, but there was none left. And I joined an organization where we were looking for an LST because we wanted to have one here to show people. We spent about 10 years looking for one. So fun. But in 1964, America gave some foreign countries some of the ships that they were just going to scuttle. And so we gave a whole bunch of ships to the Greeks to rebuild their navy. And in 1999, they decided the LST was obsolete. They're using helicopters now. They didn't really need those LSTs anymore, so they were scrapping the ones that we'd given them. And when we heard about it, we went over there to see if we could get one. And we spent 4 months over on the Isle of Crete in the Greek islands, restoring it, making it seaworthy, and brought it back to the United States on its own power. They said it couldn't be done. If you go onto the YouTube and type in Return of LST 325, you'll see the History Channel documentary of us bringing that ship back, because they said they thought it was impossible. And I know that modern young people in the Navy would be impossible because they count on computers. We didn't have computers. We knew how to handle a ship without computers, and we didn't really have that much problem getting it back, although we had plenty of problems because it was an old ship. But we have it here now. We take it and give tours on it. I was on it last year, and we took it up the Mississippi. They're on their way to Tennessee right now to give some tours. So I've sort of covered my life, and I just wonder now if you guys had any questions.